You were never a partner, Emery. You were just the scaffolding we climbed to build something real. And like any scaffolding, you were always meant to be taken down once the structure stood tall. That's what my father said, the same man who once called me the future of this company, as he calmly erased me from the very thing I helped build from the ground up. If you've ever been treated like a tool by your own family, valued only when you were useful, then stay. Because this story isn't just mine. It belongs to all of us who were seen as temporary, then quietly discarded when our contributions became inconvenient to acknowledge. I stared at the Genacor logo etched onto the meeting room's frosted glass, the silver letters warped by my reflection. Beyond it, the hallway buzzed quietly. Assistants scurried with tablets. A couple of junior researchers were whispering about a patent filing. Inside the glass cage, it was cold silence, and tension coiled like a spring. 3 years ago, I helped build this company with nothing but a borrowed lab and a freezer full of cell lines. My name was on the founding documents. My fingerprints were in the sequencing code that saved our first round of funding. And yet, that morning, I wasn't even CC'd on the Q2 protocol update. The shift was subtle at first, like someone turning the dimmer down in a room. At 9:14 a.m., I'd gotten a calendar ping canceling my 10 a.m. strategy session with the biotech innovation team. No reason, just postponed. That meeting was mine. Had been since we landed our FDA clearance. I stepped into the lab to find Ethan leaning over Melissa, his new assistant, as she nervously tapped through her screen. She looked up at me, cheeks flushing. Emery, thought you were in the innovation review? Canceled, I said. Ethan straightened, flashing that same polished plastic smile he'd perfected in investor briefings. It's just logistics. Budget reshuffles, resource allocations, nothing urgent. I see. I kept my voice light, but my skin prickled. Logistics? That team was working on CRISPR-assisted microRNA mapping for neurodegenerative disorders. Not exactly lunch orders. Melissa, clearly flustered, turned to hand Ethan a folder, then stopped midway. Her eyes darted toward me, then back to him. Too late. I'd already seen the cover tab. Q2 realignment, resource transition plan. I raised an eyebrow. Is that the R&D transition brief? Melissa opened her mouth, then shut it. Ethan took the folder swiftly, shielding it with his arm like it might spontaneously combust. It's preliminary. We're not locking anything until Dad reviews the downstream impact. Funny. I thought I was part of that process. You are, he said, already walking away. We'll loop you in when it's finalized. Loop me in. I walked back to my office in silence, trying to ignore the sharp burn forming in my chest. I tapped my screen. No updates from the executive channel. I pinged our cloud archive. Access denied. My credentials were under verification. Another denial when I tried the budget tracker for the B-cell initiative. This wasn't a glitch. It was deliberate. My father once told me back when we first founded Genacor, "You're the future of this place." I used to believe that. Now I wasn't even allowed into my own inbox. By noon, I was nursing a headache and a cold espresso when Zoe messaged me. ZK. Got a sec? Meet me in R2, privately. I took the side stairs to Research Lab 2, trying not to imagine the worst. Zoe was standing near the sample freezer, arms crossed, eyes sharp behind her tinted lenses. You look like someone ran over your dog, she said. Close, I muttered. She hesitated, then handed me her tablet. It was an internal project flowchart. My name was scrubbed from every R&D thread. A redacted coordination block was now assigned to Interim Strategic Lead, E. Blake. They're rerouting all high-tier lab approvals through Ethan, Zoe said. I stared at the screen. And the kicker? She added. Your trial license for the next-gen splicing assay was pulled. Legal says they are evaluated patent alignment. But I saw the draft 2 weeks ago. It was clean. My jaw clenched. Why didn't they just fire me outright? Zoe paused, then leaned closer. Because if they did, you'd have a severance agreement, and a non-disclosure they'd have to pay you to sign. Right now, they're trying to make you walk away. Silence. The hum of the freezer was the only sound between us. I backed toward the door slowly, pulse pounding. We need to talk, Zoe said, her voice low and certain. I think they're cutting you out. It only takes one wrong link to blow the whole facade. The glow of my laptop was the only source of light in the room. Outside my West Loop apartment window, the Chicago skyline blinked with silent indifference, neon reflections stretching across the coffee I hadn't touched in hours. I should have been asleep. Instead, I was staring at an email with a subject line so bland it might have slipped past anyone who wasn't already suspicious. Q2 deck, public version. Melissa sent it, probably without realizing it. Just a shared drive link. But as soon as I clicked it, I knew something was off. The folder was marked Board Brief, April 2024, but didn't have the usual sanitized language or placeholder graphics. It was raw, mid-edit, and not meant for me. The fifth slide stopped me cold. Strategic Realignment Proposal, Phase 2. Below the title, a table outlined Leadership Transition Scenarios. My name was there, second row, struck through with a thick red line. Emery Blake, key person, delays IPO, contractual complications. Suggested action, transition to advisory or early departure, May 2024 interim. Ethan Blake, COO to VP R&D liaison. My stomach dropped. A sticky note graphic hovered on the slide like a digital insult. Check NDA clause. Remove with minimal public impact. They weren't just phasing me out. They were actively orchestrating it, managing optics, timing, and investor perception like I was some expired asset in a portfolio. I copied the folder link, saved it to an encrypted drive, then called Zoe. She answered on the second ring. No pleasantries. I was hoping I'd be wrong. Melissa sent me a link, unintentionally. I don't think she knows it wasn't scrubbed yet. Zoe exhaled slowly. I checked the back-end permissions this morning. Your entire archive folder was set to view only last week. Admin privilege removed. That's illegal, I said flatly. My name is still on the core patents. That's why they haven't terminated you yet. They're trying to get around you. I closed my eyes, every cell in my body vibrating with a cold kind of rage. Can you forward me anything you find in the update logs? I'm already on it. As I hung up, my eyes caught the edge of a signed frame beside my desk. My offer letter, co-signed by my parents the day we launched Genacor. Charles and Linda. I remembered their smiles that afternoon. I remembered believing in them. I clicked into another tab and launched an encrypted video call. The line connected in 2 rings. Natalie Chang appeared, hair in a bun, blazer still on despite the late hour in Boston. Well, she said, not even blinking. I was expecting this call 2 months ago. I managed a dry smile. I should have listened when you said to register every patent under my name. You did, right? I nodded. Every single one. She tilted her head. Then you're sitting on their golden goose. Pull the IP rights and they can't manufacture their flagship line without licensing it from you. Wouldn't that tank the IPO? I asked. Natalie arched an eyebrow. Only if the market finds out before they negotiate. A silence passed. The balance of power shifted in my chest, heavy but alive. She leaned forward. What's your endgame, Emery? Revenge or leverage? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. We hung up and I stared again at the slide Melissa had accidentally gifted me. Key person contract may delay IPO. Now they were scrambling to make me legally disappear. I opened my inbox and found it waiting. Subject: Monday morning, special session, realignment confirmation. I entered the room as a founder. I left as a legal inconvenience. The elevator ride to the 26th floor felt longer than it ever had, even though it barely lasted 15 seconds. I watched the numbers climb while trying to still the chaos inside my chest. My badge still worked, for now, but I felt like an intruder in a company I co-founded. When the doors slid open, the executive boardroom stretched out like a courtroom. Everything gleamed. The glass walls, the dark oak table, the company crest centered behind the far seat like a seal of authority. The air was over-filtered and still, cold, like it had been emptied of oxygen and meaning. Charles sat at the head of the table. He didn't look up when I entered. His hands were folded, calm, decisive. The same posture he used during investor calls. Linda offered a soft smile from her seat across the table. Polished, sympathetic. She always played diplomat, even when delivering betrayal in the nicest possible tone. Ethan sat to the left, tablet open, brows furrowed in affected concern. A fourth square blinked on the screen at the far end of the table. Our corporate attorney, appearing via video from some sunlit office far from this iceberg. I took the seat nearest the door, my back straight, hands calm. I didn't speak first. Ethan did. "We wanted to thank you for coming in today, Emery. I know the notice was short." Notice? The email gave me 12 hours. I nodded once, not trusting my voice yet. Charles finally looked at me, his gaze blank. "You've always been an important part of this company's DNA, Emery. But the board has had to make some difficult decisions, given our upcoming restructuring. Our vision," Linda added, her voice the temperature of chamomile tea, "has shifted toward scalability, and your current role, while valuable, has been reevaluated." I stayed quiet. I wanted them to get to the part where they stopped pretending. Ethan tapped his tablet. "As noted in the March 28th board meeting." "The one I wasn't invited to?" I asked, voice quiet. He blinked. "The one attended by executive voting members. Per that meeting, we're initiating a temporary reduction in R&D leadership overlap." I almost laughed. Overlap. Like my entire career here had somehow become a clerical error. Charles cleared his throat. "Your access will be formally revoked by end of day." Linda reached into her folder and slid a packet across the table. "This outlines the transition process. Legal will handle any concerns." The voice on the screen chimed in, firm and detached. "Per protocol, all future inquiries must be routed through corporate counsel. This protects both you and the company during this sensitive time." So that was it. No yelling, no fighting. Just white glove exile. One quiet, calculated incision. I thought about that line Dad once said, after letting go of a whole department in under an hour. In this company, decisions are made like surgery. Quick and clean. They weren't even hiding it. I took a breath so deep it scraped the bottom of my lungs. "Understood," I said, the word cutting through the stale air like a scalpel. No outburst. No begging. I stood. I didn't shake hands. I didn't give them a closing speech or dramatic look back. As I exited the room, the door's soft click behind me sounded like a vault ceiling shut. By the time I reached the parking garage, my hands were shaking. Not from fear, but the weight of every silent betrayal finally landing. I gripped the steering wheel with white knuckles and tried to will the tears away. My phone buzzed. One new message. "Natalie Cheng. We should meet. You're not as powerless as they think." They took everything but forgot who signed the invention disclosures. The polished steel of Natalie's desk reflected the morning light like a surgical tray. Clean, clinical, precise. She sat across from me, sleeves rolled to the elbows, espresso in one hand, her other clicking through documents with the efficiency of someone who'd drafted takedowns before breakfast. On the screen, the letter looked simple. 3 pages, tightly formatted, zero flair. Subject: Termination of licensing agreement. Patent group number BN 2023-441 through BN 2023-487. "Once this is sent," Natalie said without looking up, "they'll have no legal right to manufacture, market, or claim intellectual ownership over the biosynth line. Effective immediately." "They'll try to stall," I said. "Oh, they'll scream," she corrected. "But that's not stalling." She hit send. It took 23 minutes for the first ripple to hit. Natalie's office was still quiet. A soft hum from the HVAC and distant clack of someone typing behind the frosted glass. But my inbox had already lit up with 3 missed calls from a private company line and 1 voice message from Linda. I didn't bother listening. Then the second wave hit. Memorial Health. The email came with the subject line, Urgent Clarification, Contractual Key Contact, and was signed by one of their VPs. I read the body twice. Heart steady, breath even. Per clause 6.2 of the partnership contract, the continued validity of this agreement is contingent upon the participation of the named key contact, Emery Blake, in R&D oversight and deployment integration. In light of recent changes, Memorial Health will suspend all procurement until this matter is resolved. I showed it to Natalie, who grinned. You see? Their power play just turned into a liability. By noon, the leak hit. An internal Dalton email thread was forwarded to Natalie's firm, anonymously. The timestamps were fresh. The subject line read, Westlake pushing back on IPO dates again. Ethan's frustration was palpable even in text. This is exactly why we said not to make her the filing signatory. Now she's legally entitled to every core innovation we've showcased. Memorial's pulling out unless we get her back in. Westlake's already jittery. We're risking the whole damn timeline. Another message followed, this time from Charles. I'll call her. At 2:47 p.m., my phone rang. His name lit up on the screen. I let it buzz twice before answering. Emery, he said, his voice lower than I remembered. Not stern, tired. We should talk, he added after a pause. I let the silence hang, not rushing to fill it. Then I said, calm and measured, talk to Natalie. I'm done talking without witnesses. I hung up before he could answer. Natalie glanced up from her screen. You always had a flair for exits. I smiled faintly. That evening, she forwarded me a new document. The title was bold, professional, but not cold. Proposal, Executive Structure Renegotiation, Preliminary Framework. Location, Rose plus Oak, Private Dining Suite. Attendees, Emery Blake, Legal Counsel, Genacor Executive Committee. This is a formal start, Natalie wrote in her message. Not a reconciliation, a recalibration. They chose a fancy restaurant to save face. I chose it to end the game. The Riverview had always been their go-to venue for PR dinners and celebratory photos, candlelight glowing off the marble, the slow shimmer of the Chicago River outside like it had somewhere better to be. It was the kind of place where deals were toasted with imported wine and mistakes were spun into market miscalculations. But tonight, it was something else entirely. Charles, Linda, and Ethan were already seated when I arrived. They had chosen a corner table with just enough distance from the other guests to pretend we were having a family meal, not a tactical summit. I wore black, tailored, nothing flashy. No jewelry except the slim chain around my neck, the one that held the flash drive Natalie had helped me encrypt. Charles stood first, ever the gentleman in public. Emery. I nodded, took the seat across from them. No hug, no handshakes. Just the clink of cutlery being adjusted by someone trying to appear composed. Linda folded her hands, smile in place. We're glad you came. I'm sure, I said, brushing the cloth napkin onto my lap without looking up. Ethan cleared his throat. We've had time to reflect. Obviously, emotions were high. Things got procedural. I stared at him. You mean when you voted to remove me and revoke access to my own work? Charles lifted a wine glass but didn't drink. What matters is the path forward. We'd like to offer you a senior advisory role. High visibility, of course. You'd be compensated. With no board seat, no vote, no authority. I cut in. The silence that followed felt dense, like humid air before a storm. I placed a single folder on the table. This is what happens if I don't agree, I said, voice even. 3 strategic clients, Memorial Health, Northbridge Ventures, and Seraph Bioworks, have stated in writing that their continued partnership is conditional on my active leadership. I let the weight of the words settle. You can't sustain operations without them. You know that. Ethan's jaw tightened. You leaked this? I didn't leak anything, I said. They contacted me. Linda glanced nervously around the room, her voice barely above a whisper. What do you want, Emery? I leaned back. 3 board seats. 1 for me, 1 for Charles, and 1 for an independent director, selected jointly. Ethan's hands clenched under the table. You're blackmailing us. No, I said coolly. I'm offering a way to survive. That's when a familiar voice broke through the tension. Emery? We turned as the manager of Memorial Health approached, casual, smiling, and all too aware of the scene he was walking into. He extended a hand. I was just wrapping up dinner. Saw you across the room. He turned to Charles, Linda, and Ethan. We're ready to sign again, once she's back at the table. He left before any of them could respond. The silence that followed wasn't tense. It was resigned. Charles spoke first. We'll review the terms. No, I said. You'll accept them. Tonight. Ethan stood, pushing his chair back just a little too hard. His voice was low, sharp. You'll regret this. I didn't blink. I already did, I said. Now I'm just billing interest. I didn't return to the company they built. I rebuilt it from what they left behind. The name on the sign outside the building hadn't changed, not technically. The polished chrome still read Dalton Biogenics in crisp sans serif, but there was a subtle addition beneath it now, etched into the glass like a signature. Reestablished 2024, co-led by Emery Blake. I stood across the street that morning in early May, watching the sunlight catch on the glass. For the first time in months, I didn't feel anger clawing up my throat when I looked at that building. I felt ownership. Not the kind you file with a lawyer, the kind that's earned in bruises, in restraint, in knowing you didn't burn it all down just because you could. Inside, the air smelled different, lighter. Maybe it was the new plant Zoe insisted on placing near every lab window, or maybe it was just the absence of fear. She was waiting near the elevator, tablet in hand, ponytail swaying. You're late, she said. I'm reestablishing boundaries, I replied, and we both laughed. Too loud for the glass lobby. Zoe had signed her new contract just days ago. Her title was the same, but the role was different. More autonomy, more voice. She called it coming back to a version of the future we were actually building. I believed her. Upstairs, the new structure had been officially announced. 3 executive seats, 3 votes, me, Charles, and a third, chosen jointly, Dr. Ava Grant from Stanford, biotech veteran with no emotional entanglements and 0 patience for drama. Charles kept his distance. He hadn't fought the restructuring, not after the Memorial Health deal resumed under my name. But he rarely spoke now. I saw him during quarterly reviews, and that was enough. He seemed relieved not to have to pretend. Linda sent a letter. Not an email. A real, ink-on-paper letter. She didn't ask for forgiveness, just said she hoped I'd find peace in what I'd fought for. I never wrote back. Ethan was gone by June, officially leading strategic partnerships abroad. Unofficially, shipped off to a satellite R&D site in Denver, where he couldn't do much harm. I didn't celebrate it. I just noted the silence where his ambition used to hum. Natalie popped onto video calls weekly. Sharp, relentless, always with a mug of tea that said, "World's most litigious friend." She was drafting long-term equity agreements now, quietly preparing the scaffolding for something bigger. That something came as a sealed envelope slipped under my office door late one Tuesday. No name on the outside. Inside, a letter from an investor, anonymous but familiar, outlining a proposal to fund a new venture. My name would be on the door. No co-signers, no board votes, just a vision and a runway. I didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, I went for a walk by the lake. Early morning, cool breeze, the city just beginning to stretch. The waves were small, rhythmic, reminding me that the world moved on, whether you were ready or not. I passed the stone bench Zoe and I used to sit at during grad school. She'd once said, "If you're not building your own thing, you're building someone else's dream." When I got back to the office, she was waiting. "You ever think about starting your own thing?" she asked, half joking, half serious. I looked out the window, past the glass, past the building with my name, and the past that came with it. "I just might," I said. They thought stripping her title would strip her worth, that by revoking her access, they could revoke her identity. But what Emery Blake's family failed to understand was that true value is never housed in a job description or a nameplate on the door. It lives in what you create, what you protect, and what you refuse to surrender. They built a glass tower and filled it with silence, assuming she'd disappear. Instead, she turned the silence into strategy. When the ones closest to you wield betrayal as a tool, the instinct is often to break, to lash out or fold inward. Emery chose a third path: precision. She didn't match manipulation with rage. She matched it with foresight. A single clause in a patent, a quietly preserved contract, a carefully timed withdrawal. These weren't just legal moves. They were declarations of autonomy. Each one said, in its own quiet language, "I still hold the pen." Her story isn't one of revenge in its crude form. No one was publicly humiliated. No empire was burned to the ground. The victory came not through destruction, but through redefinition. The very family who sought to erase her became footnotes in a company reborn. She didn't beg for her seat back. She rewrote the table. Justice didn't come in dramatic courtroom scenes or social media exposés. It came in dotted lines, delayed IPOs, boardroom realignments, and the quiet unraveling of a plan built on arrogance. What makes this justice even more powerful is that it came on her terms, not to seek approval, but to restore truth. The lesson is clear, though often overlooked. Power doesn't always look like dominance. Sometimes it's measured in restraint, in knowing when to act, and when to let silence do the heavy lifting. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but it resonates powerfully once it's heard. In the end, Emery didn't just reclaim her position. She reclaimed the narrative. And for anyone who's ever been cast aside, misunderstood, or underestimated, her journey is a reminder. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. Because sometimes the most devastating response to betrayal is not vengeance. It's evolution. If her story struck a chord with you, if you've ever been quietly erased, then forced to watch others profit from what you built, don't just leave in silence. Like this video if you believe quiet strength speaks louder than betrayal. Subscribe to the channel for more stories of power reclaimed and voices restored. Turn on notifications because next week we're releasing My Family Claimed I Was Too Emotional to Run the Company until my signature blocked their IPO. And if that sounds familiar, you're not alone. This isn't just storytelling. This is reclamation. You weren't erased from the story, Avery. You were never important enough to remember. That's what Madeline said to me, right there at the gala, with all the lights on her and every piece of my work reduced to silence. Words that cut deeper than they sounded, because they came from someone I once believed would never deny my worth. Has anyone here ever been treated like an afterthought by the very people who were supposed to care the most? Then stay. Because if you've ever been edited out just for not fitting their version of the story, this one is here to write you back in. The scent of roasted turkey, sage, and cinnamon drifted through the marble corridors of the Blake estate. Lavish, golden lit, and impersonal. The kind of place designed for pictures, not people. I walked in holding a bottle of Syrah wrapped in brown paper, knowing no one would notice I'd brought it. Knowing it didn't matter. The entryway was as polished as ever, voices spilling from the dining hall ahead. Forced laughter, clinking glasses. I slipped past the framed portraits on the wall, each carefully curated to exclude the inconvenient parts of this family's story. including me. I remembered what Dad said the last time he looked at me like I mattered. You'll be the one they never see coming.